What is up, everybody? This is Adam. Welcome back to Fouled Out. We are making the transition from the NFL to the NBA on the podcast today. Now that the Super Bowl is over and the NFL season is all wrapped up, this is going to be just our second podcast of the NBA season. So far, we did an obligatory drop in podcast when Luka was traded to the Lakers, which is just crazy town. It's still crazy town, even weeks later. I can't get over it. I know my dad doesn't want to hear about it anymore, but guys, Luka Doncic was traded to the Lakers this season. That might come up on this episode again, but it's time to catch up on the NBA season. It's a pretty good time to do it because it is February 20th, the Thursday after the All-Star break. Lakers and Hornets came back for the first game of the post All-Star break last night, and then there's a full slate of games today, but a good time to jump into the NBA season. And Matt and I are going to jump in with our hot takes from the NBA season so far, maybe some regular takes in here too, but things that have stood out to us, hot takes that we have for the NBA season so far. We're going to go back and forth when he joins the podcast. Couple things before we get started. One, I apologize if my voice is raspy or you can't hear me as well. I've been sick for a little bit over a week now, and I'm finally feeling better, but my voice is still kind of borderline. So try to drink a bunch of water and not cough into the microphone. I think we're going to be okay. And then second thing, a reminder, you can reach out to us, fouledoutsports@gmail.com. If you email us, you don't have to listen to my voice be all raspy, but I will respond to you. Let us know what your hottest takes of the NBA season are so far and how you feel about ours on this podcast. But for now, let's grab Matt. Let's talk NBA. Let's go. Bump, bump, bump. Hot takes. Yeah, we're going down, down, baby. This fight. When I told Matt we were doing an NBA takes podcast, his first reaction was, he's like, why am I thinking of the Nelly song? Boom, boom, boom. Hot takes. So I told him we would start the podcast like that. And I don't know if you believed I would actually do it, but here we are.
Here we are.
Second NBA podcast of the NBA season. I mentioned in the opener, we went and talked about the Luka Doncic trade ad nauseum on a emergency pod the day after he was traded. So if you guys want to hear how we felt about that, you can go back and listen to that pod. We did our post Super Bowl pod last week that came out last Wednesday. We are now recording this on a Thursday. So it's been about a week and a half since the people got some fresh fouled out. I think we are recharged, re-energized, and ready to talk about a different sport. Because I think that was kind of the reaction on the post Super Bowl pod was like, yeah, we're ready to move on.
Absolutely.
For those of you that are huge NFL fans and miss your fouled out NFL content, do not worry. It will not be too long until we're back talking about football. The plan for the podcast coming up, we have this NBA podcast along with two more coming your way over the next couple of weeks. The week of March 10th, we will do an NFL free agency podcast because free agency opens on the 10th. So we'll have a podcast come out that week talking about all the signings. Then we will jump into March Madness for 3 weeks, followed by the month of April, which is going to be 5 straight NFL draft podcast, which some would say that is our wheelhouse. That is our best time. But I say that all times are our best time. And I'm ready to talk about basketball.
For sure.
The assignment for this podcast was to come with 3 to 5 takes. So we're gonna do at least 3 each, and we'll discuss them. Do you want to go first or you want to go second?
Doesn't matter to me.
All right. Well, why don't you lead us off with your first take from the NBA season?
Okay. Well, I'll start with the one that we kind of started discussing before we went on air. The NBA doesn't know what the people want. The All-Star format was an unmitigated disaster this year. It was worse than when it was East-West and nobody tried. It's worse than when it was just, two teams of Buddy Ball and LeBron and KD were just basically choosing their friends. And I don't really know anyone that was like, yeah, that was good. I mean, especially like if you're not a team that's highly marketed, like, I'll use the Pistons as an example. Cade Cunningham finally made the All-Star game, and he played 5 minutes because of this format.
Yeah. At least your guy made the All-Star team. My guy suffered generational robbery. Sabonis not making the All-Star team is pretty awful.
Yeah, that was pretty atrocious. Yeah. On top of that, all season long, I have been hearing the NBA and media around the NBA making all sorts of excuses as to why ratings are down for the NBA. And every single time they miss the most glaring reason why ratings are down. The NBA makes it exceedingly hard for you to watch their games. And like all they have to do is fix that and it will immediately improve. Maybe not to the point where they want it to be, but like there's tons of people like myself that don't watch nearly as many of their team's games as they would like to because you either have to pay for a shit product like Valley Sports or you have to use an illegal stream.
Yeah, I have two takes for you. Neither of these are the takes that I brought to the podcast, but my take on the All-Star game might be a hot take for some people, and it's just that everybody needs to stop complaining about the All-Star game. I think every year the NBA gets hammered for how awful their All-Star game is.
Yeah.
So then next year they're like, we're gonna try something new. Let's do something different. It'll be fun, and it's
And
never
then
fun.
they come up with a worse
Yeah,
idea every year.
it's worse every year. So just stop complaining. And they'll like when it was East versus West and nobody tried, it, we knew what it was,
Yeah.
right? Like, so if you tuned in to watch it and then complained about it, it's your own damn fault. You know what it's gonna be. You
Yeah.
still know what it's gonna be. Like there's nothing they can do to get these guys to try.
No.
And I think it's hilarious that the NBA has their All-Star game the same time that the NHL is doing this Four Nations face-off thing,
Yeah.
where the Four Nations face-off has been absolutely phenomenal
Yeah.
because it's all-star teams from four different countries of guys that are actually trying to win games and play
Mhm.
physically and play with some heart. While the NBA is like, what if Kevin Hart just did stand up for a half an hour while guys played basketball? That'll be fun. That's what people want to see, right? So just stop complaining about the All-Star game, let it suck, and just don't watch it. It's fine. Uh, but my other take actually has to do with hockey too, and I think the NBA has the worst on-field or on-court product of at least three of the four major sports in North America, and then I think it's debatable with baseball. I think the NFL and the NHL have superior on field or on court products or on
Mhm.
ice products as it is during the regular season. I think regular season basketball has lots of problems, including load management, where
Yep.
like we went through this a couple of years ago. We specifically bought tickets to the Golden State versus Pistons game. So we're like, wow, we're like, we were all trying to pick one game to go to, and we're like, seeing Steph
Yeah.
Curry would be fun. And then I had COVID, so I couldn't go, but you guys went, and Curry, Clay, and Draymond all sat out.
Literally nobody played.
You guys just watched Jordan Poole cook the Pistons for 3 hours, which is not what anybody pays to see on either side of that equation. But so like load
Yeah,
management's a
Draymond was
problem.
pissed.
Yeah, like load management's a problem where it's like, okay, I really want to watch my favorite player come to
Mhm.
town and I don't know if he's going to play.
Yeah.
I have no idea. And so you're like buying a ticket is a risk where you don't know if the guy you want to watch is going to play.
Yep.
The other problem is that the style is so homogenous now during the regular season where every single team plays the same way.
Yeah.
It's just the degree to which you play that way, where it's pick and rolls and it's a shitload of threes. Like everybody's shooting between like 30 and 50 threes a game.
Hmm.
It's not like the NFL where literally every single team has a different plan of attack.
Yeah.
And we just watched a team that primarily runs the ball win a Super Bowl in an era where people are throwing at like all-time rates. So there's just no difference. It doesn't feel like, you turn on basically any game and you're going to see the same style of basketball from both teams the entire game. And it's like it's good in some ways, it's bad in some ways, but like I just feel like not only is it hard to access NBA games, that they're sometimes hard to watch because the guy you
Yeah.
tuned in to watch might not be playing, and the guys
Yeah.
who are playing are all playing the same way, and it's like it's just a 3 point shooting competition a lot of times. It changes in
Yeah.
the playoffs a bit. The playoffs are better because defense is better in the playoffs, and there's shorter rotations. So I'm not watching like Bones Highland shoot six threes, but regular
Yeah.
season, I think they have problems, and I think that's all of the factors we're mentioning are why their ratings are down.
Yeah. Yeah. I won't disagree with you that there are definitely other factors there. I would just say that if you address all those other things and don't address the access, it's not going to change.
Yeah, absolutely. The funniest thing to me is it's like I picture Adam Silver sitting in his office being like, "What do the people want?" And everybody's like, "We want to watch basketball." And Adam Silver's like, "The NBA is a lifestyle brand." You're like, "God damn it!" He's, he literally said that the other day, that he sees the NBA as a lifestyle brand. And I'm like, it's fucking basketball. We just
Just
want basketball.
and there's got to be like tons of flies in the room in all of these meetings, and he's just using his lizard tongue to. He certainly doesn't act like a human. He certainly doesn't look like a human.
I like
He,
him though. Like, if we have to have a lizard overlord, can it be Adam Silver and not
that
Jeff
that
Bezos?
yeah, like I will agree with you that like if there is a lizard overlord, it could be a lot worse.
I'd rather be ruled by Adam Silver than Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. I'm just gonna put that out there. My first take before we get back into Oakland County Politico. We did a hot takes podcast one time where I did a little warning at the beginning where I was like, you might burn your ears listening to this. And Marley thought it was like the funniest thing I've ever said on the podcast. So I'm going to put it out there again before I start spitting out my takes is just be careful listening to this. Turn the heat setting on your headphones down. My first take is that I do not believe in the Oklahoma City Thunder as a contender. Yeah. As of recording, they are 44-10, which is tied with the Cleveland Cavaliers for the best record in the NBA. I I'm gonna throw this out there as well is that I also don't believe in the Cleveland Cavaliers as a contender, but I feel like that's not as spicy as not believing in Oklahoma City. OKC is up 8 games on the two-seeded Grizzlies in the West. They are second in odds to win the championship at plus 230, only behind the Boston Celtics. And they are number one in odds to win the West at minus 110. They are fifth in offensive rating, first in defensive rating this season. They are a very, very, very good regular season team. However, there are two reasons I don't necessarily believe in them when it comes playoff time. One is that one of their biggest strengths, if not their biggest strength outside of Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, is that they are extremely, extremely deep. They have 12 guys who score over 5 points per game, 13 guys who play over 10 minutes a game, seven guys who score over 9.5, and nine guys who play 20 plus minutes per game. Depth is great. Depth is awesome. But depth is not necessarily something that translates to the NBA playoffs when everybody cuts down their rotations to 7 or 8 guys. So you're playing 12 guys, 13 guys right now. Pretty decent minutes. 5 or 6 of those guys are not going to play when it matters. And you got to trim that roster down and decide who is getting those extra minutes. Two, and I think more importantly, maybe most importantly, who is going to step up in the playoffs to be the number 2 and number 3 option for this team? Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is undoubtedly a top 5 player in the entire world and was incredible in the playoffs last year. But typically you're going to need some help. And this is what happened to him last year is he was like 32 points, I think 5 or 6 rebounds and 8 assists per game in that series against the Dallas Mavericks. But they lost. And you go back and look at why they lost, and it's because guys like Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren were not able to step up. And looking at Jalen Williams' stats from that series, you might be like, oh, it wasn't actually that bad.
There
But
was.
yeah, this is why we watched the games, because he was deer in the headlights mode for games, 2 through 6 of that series.
Yeah.
He was very not good. And Chet got absolutely demolished on the boards in that series as well. Like Gafford and Lively were eating his lunch. So I know they made some moves to try to improve that. Like they got Isaiah Hartenstein. They got Caruso to try to help with some of the perimeter defense stuff that was lacking in that playoff series last year. But if someone doesn't step up offensively to help out Shai as they get deeper in the playoffs, it's going to be a problem for them. And I look at teams like the Wolves or the Lakers who have just a shitload of options to throw at Shai.
Yeah.
You're never going to stop him. But the more looks and the more guys you can throw at him, the harder you can make it on him. And the more you're going to make it so that someone else needs to step up and play well. And I mean, it was their first playoff run together last year. So we'll see if they can improve. But if Jalen Williams can't be that guy, this team is not making it out of the second round again. I don't think they are. So like I look at like the Wolves and the Lakers, that could be a problem. I think a team like the Nuggets could be a real problem for them because like Hartenstein's great, but if you're throwing Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren at Nikola Jokic in a playoff series, I really don't think that's ending well for you. So teams that have a lot of options to throw at Shai, teams with big guys. I mean, like for the Wolves, it's not like Rudy Gobert is great shakes, but he can rebound. And that could be a problem for those guys inside. So until I see otherwise, I do not believe in Oklahoma City as a contender this season.
Anyone with a reasonable mindset is still kind of sitting there saying, like, show me. Right? Especially after what happened last year, like, show me. And I mean, I do think it's a good point about the depth. I would like to say that yes, their rotation is going to get shortened and they will, cut it down to at least 7 or 8 guys. But they might not. You never know. So it just there's so many unknowns with how they're going to look in the playoffs right now that you cannot pencil them in as a contender right now.
Yeah, I think I've just seen this movie so many times.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about it a lot with LeBron's 8 or 9 conference finals
Yeah.
whatever, where every single year in the East, there was teams like the Hawks and the Raptors and the Pacers
Yeah.
who had these awesome regular seasons, and people are like, "Oh, LeBron is the underdog because this team is so good and they're deep and blah blah
Hmm.
blah." And every single time, the team with the more talented player would just take them out. In this
Yeah.
case, it was prime LeBron. The big difference with Oklahoma City is that they, in the vast majority of series, they're going to have the best player on the floor. But when
Hmm.
they didn't have the best player on the floor last year, they got knocked out by the Mavericks.
Yeah.
And you still have Luka and Jokic in your conference that you're going to have to get past in some way, shape, or form.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. I mean, I feel better about the Cavs having a fighting chance just because Allen and Mobley, what they can do defensively is going to cause a problem for everyone that they play. So,
yeah,
um,
my thing with the
but
Cavs,
but I worry about uh like the consistency of you know Garland and Donovan Mitchell.
yeah, my thing with the
Like,
Cavs specifically is that we've seen this movie with them for a couple of years now
mhm.
where they haven't been this good in the regular season,
Yeah,
but it seems like every single year they make the playoffs and just like whether it's that series they had against Orlando that was just a complete and utter like rock fight the entire time,
yeah,
or they had a series against the Knicks a couple of years ago where they got eliminated, and it's like they just always disappoint in the playoffs.
yeah. I'm giving them a little bit of grace with having some leadership change there. Uh, I think they definitely always at the very least needed a different voice. But yeah, like they are in the same boat of like you've got to show it.
Yeah. Donovan Mitchell was cooking the Celtics last year though, before he
Yeah.
got hurt in that playoff series. And Donovan Mitchell can, I think the consistency is a good point, but he can
Yep.
do that. He has
Oh,
the
I
ceiling.
mean, early Jazz, Donovan Mitchell was an absolute demon in the playoffs.
He had that series against the Nuggets.
Yeah.
That's the where him and
Like
Jamal
him and
Murray were just
Jamal Murray were
going
just
ham.
cooking.
That's one of those series that like we're gonna talk about when we're like old. In fact, you remember
Yeah.
like way back and the kids are gonna be like, "What are you guys talking about?" We're just like, "Oh, it was a great series." So, uh, what what is your second take?
Cade Cunningham is unarguably a top 15 player in the NBA.
I knew this was coming in
Yeah,
some
yeah.
way, shape, or form.
He has been just so goddamn good in every way imaginable. Like, the only criticism you can really make of him is turnovers, and that's going to happen with anyone that carries his usage. It really points out just how awful the situation last year was with why am I blanking on his Monty Williams. Uh, because I mean, right now he's putting up 25.4 a game, 6.3 rebounds, and 9.4 assists, shooting 45.5% from the field and still 35 from three. It which that was higher earlier in the season. I think uh Jaden Ivey going down kind of hurt his efficiency quite a bit. He's getting a lot more attention now. But like for them to be in this position now without Jaden Ivey and him being like just needing to be so heliocentric that it's really impressive because he doesn't have the talent around him that like Jokic does, right? Like not saying he's as good as Jokic, but like
But I'm not
Jokic
not
has
saying he's as good as
yeah.
you.
But like Jokic clearly has more to work with.
Yeah. I so knew that this was coming that I already have Cade Cunningham's NBA reference page pulled up
Yep.
on my other screen here. So I think the thing that's been most impressive about Cade this season. And I can't say if I agree with you or not that he's a top 15 player just because I haven't done any ranks. But if I look at who I voted for last year, I definitely see some guys that I would take him over in my top 15. So I'm not saying I disagree with you. I would just have to go back and do it. But uh I think the thing that's most impressive is like not only are the counting stats getting better,
Hmm.
but all of the advanced like peripheral stuff that I like
Yeah.
to look at is better. It's not the best, but like PER is up.
Hmm.
He's got a 20 PER right now. His previous high was 17 from last season. His defensive rating has gone down from 120 to 113, which for people who don't know, you want that number to be as low as possible. So going down is a very good thing.
Yeah, well, and like some of that, I'm like, I don't know because his like field goal percentage allowed this year is actually pretty low. So, it's just like,
Yeah, it's getting his defense is getting better, is
yeah,
what I'm getting at. And
yeah,
that was one of the things because last year he put up raw numbers too. He was 24, 5, and 8 about last season, which he's putting up better numbers now and doing it more efficiently, which is
yep,
probably why the numbers are getting better.
yeah,
But the big knock on him last season was they had that metric that was called like PEST or whatever. It was like perimeter efficiency something.
yeah,
It was a perimeter defense metric. And he was one of the very worst in the entire league last season.
yeah,
And it was like, okay, so is this guy just gonna be like heliocentric
yeah,
offensive player, get his stats? The PER wasn't that great.
hmm,
Now the PER is coming up. He's playing better defense. I think
yeah,
not only is the situation better for him, but prior to this season, he had only played what 100 and let's call it 130 games
yeah,
in 3 years. So there's just some time to develop, have a better staff.
yep,
The roster around him is a bit better. It's
yeah,
better this season than it was last season, but it's still not great.
no,
So I think the fact that
hmm,
knock on wood, they're likely at least going to be a play in team this year,
yeah.
probably better than that. They might get the 6 seed. And that he's going to have this type of
They're only
season.
two games back of the 4 seed.
Yeah, so they're going to be in the mix for sure. But I think
Yeah,
if he has this type of season, like numerically, and they make the playoffs, I think there's a very very good case to be talking about him as a top 15, top 20 guy.
yeah, I mean the main pushback that I got for putting him in my top 30, which again looks really, really good now, was their record, right? Like the fact that they weren't winning any games. And that has shown to be a little bit of an aberration. Uh, that seemingly everyone immediately got significantly better the moment that Monty Williams is gone. Um, and you know, Troy Weaver tried to tank every single season in Detroit, so they never really had a chance to win. Um, so yeah, I think this is like his first chance to actually legitimately show his impact as a basketball player in the NBA. And I mean, to ask much more of him than what he's done is really splitting hairs.
Yeah, I mean I think at this point, I look at last season and I'm like, okay, I don't feel too bad about leaving him off because a lot of the criteria we typically talk about as far as like being available
Yep.
and winning basketball games and all that stuff. Like he
Hmm.
wasn't hitting that before this year. So I think it's
Yeah.
fair to increase your opinion of him this season. If you had a low opinion of him before, um, my opinion of him was never low. We both really liked him in the draft
Yeah.
because he's like a diet Luca in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. And I think other people are really starting to see that this season.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
I think this is really the first year where he's like getting any sort of shine.
Yeah.
So,
Speaking of Luka Doncic, my second take, and this one's probably not all that spicy, but I think the Luka to the Lakers trade is the best possible thing that could have happened to the NBA. Drama is the NBA's superpower. I, I talked about this already. I think the NFL and the NHL have better on field or on court products than the NBA does. I think that other sports are more fun to watch during the regular season, but no sport is more fun to talk about than the NBA. There was a tweet from Derek Thompson that said something along the lines of, and it was like leading up to the Super Bowl. I've listened to 10 hours of NBA podcast content this week and watched zero NBA games. I've listened to zero NFL podcasts this week, but we'll watch the entire Super Bowl.
you know, the Luka trade even like made a blip in last week tonight with John Oliver. Like,
Yeah, this is the thing is that like things like this do not happen in other leagues.
no,
Player movement, the way that it happens for NBA star players, does not happen in other leagues. Like I know, Otani left the Angels in free agency, and like he did that of his own volition during
yeah,
free agency. For the a top three player in the entire world to get traded
yeah,
without asking for it and without knowing about it
yep,
is fucking insane. It's still like weeks later, it's still crazy to me. But the fact that it was Super Bowl media week and we're leading up to the Super Bowl and nobody cared and everybody was talking about Luka. And then like we all watched the Super Bowl and we're like, holy crap. And then we talked about the Super Bowl for a little bit. And then we instantly go back to like, but what about that Luka trade? Everybody's talking about it. And I think that this time of year, it is notoriously difficult to generate interest in the NBA. Like, we
hmm
see the ratings are down. We're kind of getting into like the dog days of the NBA season where it's like this dead time between All-Star break and the real playoff push in the playoffs where
yeah,
it gets really interesting, where it's like, okay, so how do we generate interest in our sport? And now you have the most interesting storyline of any of the four professional sports we've seen this year, where this guy got traded. He's obviously not happy about it, but he's not like pissed off, chip on the shoulder yet. He's like depressed, sad Luka. Like the Lakers lost to the Hornets last night, the first game back from the All-Star break. And they interviewed Luka after, and they're like, did you spend time during the All-Star break trying to think of how you could play with LeBron? And he's like, honestly, I tried to spend my All-Star break getting away from basketball. Like
yeah.
I just didn't want to think about basketball at all because he's so unhappy right now. So like not only do you have that aspect of it, you have a game against the Dallas Mavericks coming up, which is appointment television. You have any big game that Luka plays, like if he goes off for like 50, he's going to have like a 15, 13, and 16 game. Or he's going to have like a 50, 13, and 16 game. And everybody's going to get on every show the next day and be like, oh my God, Dallas traded Luka. Can't believe it. So you have that content machine. You have sad Luka content machine. And then you have the story that broke today saying that he may not even be interested in re-signing with the Lakers, where he has one more year under contract, I believe, and then he would be a
Yeah,
free agent. And they're like, he never wanted to be a Laker. He never grew up wanting to be a Laker. He never
yeah,
said he wanted to be a Laker. He just
hmm
happens to be a Laker, and he's not from this country and doesn't particularly care about the brand.
yeah,
So now apparently the Lakers are under immense pressure to try to get a deal done because there was nothing in place when they traded for him. So chances are they'll get something done, but you have that drama. The Lakers in the playoffs, like the Lakers are the most fascinating team to watch right now. Everybody wants to watch them with LeBron and Luka. Like I think this was a really good thing as far as generating interest in the NBA, both on and off the court.
Yeah, I mean, like it certainly garners a lot of attention.
Well, and you know
Uh,
that I'm here for the memes and
yep.
Nico Harrison memes. We eating good right now.
Well, and I guess that leads into my third one. Every chair in the Mavericks front office is a cup chair because every time someone from that organization opens their mouth about the trade, it just gets worse.
I think
Everyone,
this is just a fact. This isn't a take anymore.
yeah, like everyone from that front office just needs to be clean out. It no one can come back. It's so bad at this point.
The
And
thing
because like they keep going at the like, oh yeah, like Nico Harrison was trying to encourage him to take better care of his body and like he never did that, so he was never gonna offer him an extension. And then the guy that you trade him for is the most fragile player in the league.
and hurt his like first game with Dallas
Literally
and
the
is
first
out
game.
for like 4 weeks now, at
Yeah.
least.
Yep. Well played.
I think the thing that's so funny is like you're absolutely right that every time they open their mouths about the trade, it gets worse. Where, they're talking about like conditioning and Nico Harrison's just like, you know, the greats like really took care of themselves. Kobe Bryant, Kevin Garnett, Shaquille O'Neal. And everyone's like, wait, did you just bring up Shaq? Did you just say that Shaq always took care of himself? The most fattest, laziest, out of shape superstar of all time, who literally could have been the GOAT if he just would have taken care of himself. You brought up that guy, and like Dallas fans are like, this guy is sitting here talking about Shaq taking care of his body. They're like, Nico Harrison brings up all of these guys who quote unquote take care of their bodies, and he's standing on fucking Dirk Nowitzki Boulevard. They named a street after Dirk Nowitzki that the stadium's on, and he doesn't fucking mention Dirk Nowitzki at all.
Yeah.
But you know what? Nico Harrison is just another Kobe Bryant cocksucker who, like, just like Jason Tatum,
Yeah.
where he's just so fucking obsessed with Kobe that he's just like, you're not Kobe. You'll never be Kobe. I'm trading you. Nico Harrison does not have Mamba mentality. Kobe would not have done this. And you know what? It's probably not even Kobe's fault. It's people
No.
misappropriating everything that Kobe ever
Yeah,
did.
I was gonna say like Kobe got nothing to do with this.
No, Kobe's like, Kobe's like, I have this like system for like how to do better in your life. And people just use that and do stupid shit. And they're like, Mamba mentality, bitch. It's not. If he was alive, if Kobe was alive right now, he'd fucking smack Nico Harrison in the face for trading Luka Doncic away. What is wrong with you? Lock in Nico Harrison. If you had Mamba mentality, you would find a way to get Luka in shape. Awful.
The problem for Nico is that his version of locking in was trading away Luca.
I saved possibly the hottest take for last. I I want you to hear me out on this one before you fall out of your chair. The LA Clippers are a smart franchise. I want you all to let that sink in. The LA Clippers are a smart franchise and they are good at team building. Hear me out. The Clippers get clowned on all the time for the Paul George trade. Where, if anybody needs a reminder, they traded Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, the probably the fourth best player in the world right now, along with like 6 picks, like, what, 4 unprotected first, 2 swaps, other stuff
Mhm.
to get Paul George. But I think that if you were in that position, hindsight's 2020. If you're in that position, I think you're pulling the trigger 100 times out of 100 on that trade to get Kawhi Leonard. Because the thing that's been lost over the last however many years since the trade was made is how good Kawhi Leonard was when they made that trade. He had just led Toronto to a championship after getting traded there by San Antonio and was like undoubtedly one of the top 2 players in the entire world. And there was lots of debates and people saying, like, if you were picking any one player to build your team around to try to win a championship, who would you pick right now? And there was like almost everybody was saying either Kawhi Leonard, LeBron James, or Kevin Durant at that
Mhm.
time. I guess Steph Curry would have been in the conversation at that time as well. But he was undoubtedly one of the top players in the world, and he was like the best playoff performer of all those guys at the time. So you were like, damn, if I'm trying to win a championship, I want Kawhi Leonard. So you have like the poor lowly Clippers who have been beat down by the Lakers for years and years and years, and you're in a city where no one cares about you, and you get a chance to get Kawhi freaking Leonard, and he tells you either trade for Paul George or I'm signing with the Lakers and playing with LeBron James. Like, of course you're doing it, especially because nobody at the time could have known that Shea Gilgeous-Alexander was going to be this. Like, obviously, if you knew he was going to be this good, you don't do that. Or at least, like, you don't also include 7 picks or whatever it is. Let me ask you this to put it in perspective. Say that Giannis is a free agent and he says, I want to sign with the Pistons. But he tells the Pistons, I'm only signing with you if you trade for Ja Morant. And you call the Grizzlies and you're like, hi, we're interested in Ja Morant. And they're like, okay, Jaden Ivey and 7 first-round picks. And you can have him. And you're sitting here and you're like, wow, I can get Giannis Antetokounmpo and I just have to get Ja Morant, but I need to make this huge trade. What are you doing? As a kicker, Giannis also tells you, if you don't do this, I'm signing with Chicago or
Well,
Cleveland or whoever it is
I
that
was gonna
you
say
Pistons fans
it'd never
hate.
be Chicago.
But just what pick a rival. He's like, I'm
Yeah,
signing with so and so if you don't do
yeah.
this.
Well, I will say that I believe I'd argue that Ja Morant is better now than uh Paul George was
Yeah,
then.
or
But
pick a
yeah, but
superstar.
yeah, you're like your point is valid, right? Like your back's into a corner there. You're gonna make that move. I don't think that makes them smart.
No, wait, I'm not. That's not why they're
Yeah,
smart. I'm just
because all this is doing is painting them as a cuck.
yes. That's not why they're smart. I'll get to the part of why they're smart. I just wanted to get ahead of the criticism here and be like, look, everybody shits on them for this trade, but you would do it if you were in their
I
shoes.
I I I take less issue with them for making the trade and more issue with them continually bringing back Paul George.
So this is one of the smart things they did
Yeah.
is this past offseason, they were like, Paul, we're going to give you a 3-year deal. And he was like, I want 4 years. And they're like, you know what, Paul? Go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
You can leave. And the Warriors were like, whoa, 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 whoa. We'll do a sign and trade. We want Paul George. Here, you can have Wiggins and other stuff. And they're like, you know what? No, we're done with this. We don't want to take on this huge bad contract just to like facilitate this Paul George thing and make him happy. Like, no, we're just out. We're out of the business. We're
Yeah.
done. We're getting this money off of our books. We don't care about losing the asset. And at the time, they were clowned because it was like, why would you just let the asset walk and not do something with the Warriors? Well, one, you let the asset walk because we've seen what the asset has turned into this season
Yep.
as probably the worst contract in the NBA.
Yeah.
And I don't think that that's a crazy thing to say. So that's part one, is that they finally were just like, you know what? We're done. We'll build the team without you. Even with all of these constraints, like money constraints they've had with the whole Kawhi and Paul George thing, constraints they've had for roster building as far as like not having draft picks and then having swaps and all these issues they've had. They're 31-23 right now, 6 in the West. Last year they were 51-31 and won the Pacific and made the playoffs. The year before that they were 44-38 and made the playoffs. And this is with like the two guys you're spending all your money on like hardly playing half your games.
Yeah.
And they've done it by being really smart around the fringes and making smart deals in the wake of what they had. Like, you know, James Harden becomes a distressed asset in Philly and nobody wants him and nobody wants to give him any money. And they're like, you know what? We'll take James Harden for 10 cents on the dollar and we'll pay him a bit. They didn't have to pay him anything crazy to keep him.
Yeah.
He's averaging 21.5, 5.8, and 8.6 right now for them. Not the same James Harden he used to be, but like he's playing well enough as their point guard for them to be winning games. And then like they're really good around the edges. They get guys like Norm Powell, who's averaging 24 points per game for them still. You know, they didn't have to give up much to get him. They get like Zubac and Amir Coffey, Derek Jones Jr. They keep finding ways to like bring in more talent and like under the radar guys who are making their team good. They just got Ben Simmons, which I think people are like, LOL, Ben Simmons. But his first game with them before the All-Star break, he had 12 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists. So they keep like getting these talented guys who are distressed assets, kind of reforming them a little bit. And so like they have a good team even without Kawhi Leonard. And then any game that Kawhi Leonard plays is just like a bonus. They're like, oh, cool, we got Kawhi for this game. See you in 3 weeks, Kawhi. And they've consistently made the playoffs. They haven't gone far since they had a deep run. They made like the Western Conference Finals the year that the Bucks won the championship.
Yeah.
But that was kind of before everything started crumbling. But they consistently make the playoffs. They have winning records. And like, I look at my team, the Kings, can't even make the goddamn playoffs. Not even once. And yet the Clippers keep finding ways, even with all their constraints, to like rework this roster and add like Bones Highland.
They
And like
made it once.
Yeah, just once. Once, and then the whole thing fell apart.
Yeah.
So, but like the Clippers don't have continued success like this with these kind of constraints without being smart and like a pretty good front office. So I'm not saying they're the best. I just think that whenever anybody talks Clippers, it's just like, LOL, Paul George trade. And everybody ignores the context of that trade and the fact that it was really for Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, who was arguably the best player in the world at that point. Like I made the case for Giannis, but it's like Giannis or Jokic or Luka, and one of those guys is like, hey, you got to trade for my buddy. You're trading for the buddy. It's the NBA. You're going to take the risk that Jaden Ivey could potentially become a top 4 player in the world. And I use Jaden Ivey specifically because that was kind of the caliber prospect that SGA was.
Yeah.
He was a late lotto pick. I know Jaden Ivey was early lotto, but Shea was a late lotto pick who had performed well in one playoff series that the Clippers lost in 6 games to the Warriors.
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, this guy has promise. He could be good. We should trade him and make this deal to get Kawhi freaking Leonard. And I think that's kind of where you're at with Jaden Ivey right now, where it's like, yeah, like he has promise. He could be good. Do you think he's going to be a top 4 player? No. So you would take that risk where it's like, yeah, we're trading him away. And God, if he becomes a top four player, then it bites us in the ass. But the
Yeah.
likelihood of that happening is very little. It just happened to happen to the Clippers because of course it happened to the Clippers. They're the Clippers.
I don't know that I'm ready to jump in head first with calling them smart, but no, I won't disagree with you that like they've been crafty over the years to cobble something together. Um, I think now that they've moved on from Paul George, these next couple of off seasons are really going to show us the caliber of their front office because they have to find some sort of way to go forward and push to be a contender in some way.
It's Norm Powell. Norm Powell is the answer. Yeah, I mean, I think like crafty is a good way to describe it. I'm impressed by the fact that they keep like I said, they keep finding these guys around the edges.
Yeah.
Like they get Amir Coffee and he's good for them.
Hmm.
You know, Bones Highland, like of what was it? The crazy thing in like Denver where he was like, Jamal Murray shouldn't be the starting point guard. It
Yeah.
should be me. And they go and like get him. They keep getting they do one of my favorite things when you're constrained. They go and get distressed assets,
Yeah.
right? Like Ben Simmons is getting bought out and they're like, "Oh, he was, talented years ago. Let's try him out because there's no downside.
Yeah.
There's no downside. It's a cheap deal. Like, yeah, Harden, same thing. And then they also add guys like Zubat, who's like really good for them. And,
Hmm.
I watch them do all this stuff and I watch my team go, who should we get back in a De'Aaron Fox trade? Let's get Zach fucking Levine. And I'm like, well, at least they're smarter than my franchise's front office, which is a low bar.
Yeah. Carlos thought that was hilarious.
They gave up 140 points to the Pelicans without Zion Williamson.
Yeah.
And I was like, they won a couple games in a row. And everybody was like, oh yeah, Beam Team Part 2, Zach LaBeam, Zach Ramento, let's go. Jonas Valanciunas. These are all smart things that we did. And then I watched CJ McCollum put up like 45 on them because we have zero perimeter defense outside of Keon Ellis. And I was like,
Yep.
this is the world that we live in now. While the Clippers keep making the playoffs somehow. Like it, yeah. Did you have any other like bonus takes you wanted to throw out real quick?
Um, look at something that I'm blanking on right now, but
My
that's
bonus
probably
take,
it.
yeah, my bonus take was that Domantas Sabonis is a top 20 player in the NBA, but that he's the most difficult good player to build around.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. I guess we do have a minute for me to just throw this out real quick. Since coming to Sacramento, he's played 213 games. In those 213 games, he's averaged 19.5, 13.4 rebounds, and 7.4 assists. Like he's been a monster. Last year, he was eighth in MVP and 10th in Defensive Player of the Year. His offensive rating over those 213 games is 129. And yet, this team cannot win games. And basically, the problem with him is like he can't be your first or second option on offense. Like he's not your best scorer. He can't be your primary playmaker, even though he's a great playmaker. If you're going to play him, you need a rim protector because he's good on post defense, but nobody really plays in the post anymore where he's good defending. So like you need a rim protector, but you need a rim protector who can space the floor because he can't space the floor. And so if you just have him and a rim protector, then you're clogging the lane. And somehow like he played with Miles Turner before, which is seemingly the perfect person to put him next to because Miles Turner shoots like high 30% from three and also gets a lot of blocks. But we saw that and it somehow still didn't work. Oh yeah. Well, the other thing too is that like he's gonna be your best rebounder because he's one of the best rebounders in the league. But then also he got fucking demolished by Kevon Looney in the playoffs, where Kevon Looney had 37 offensive rebounds in that Warriors King series a few years ago, which is 5.3 offensive rebounds per game, which is a crazy number.
I
So
I would give him a little bit of break on that because it was very early in the series when Draymond decided to stomp the ever-loving shit out of his sternum.
yeah,
So, I mean, I would imagine it's probably hard to fight box outs after
with a broken
200
sternum.
and, 60 to 70 pounds smashing into your sternum.
Yeah, well, this is the hard thing is like he's a great regular season player. He had a bad playoff series because he had a broken hand and a fractured sternum. And then, like last year, the Kings made the play in, and he was amazing against the Warriors in the play in last season. But
Hmm.
then it was good against the Pelicans too. But then they lost to the Pelicans without Zion Williamson, which is a trend for them. But it's like he's awesome, but this team can't win games because like what like it's so hard to be like who do you put around him?
Yeah, it's weird because he's a ball dominant scorer that can distribute, but he's also a post player. So,
He's like a
like,
yeah, he's like a ball dominant scorer who can distribute, but you don't want him to dominate the ball or be your primary scorer.
yeah, it's just,
He's a very weird player. I love him. He's awesome. He's a double
yeah.
double and triple double machine, but like he's so hard to build around. It's like, okay, who would you put with him? And it's like, yeah, I'd put Steph Curry with him. And it's like, yeah, you put Steph Curry with anybody. Who do you realistically put with this guy? Because nothing they've tried really works.
Okay, hear me out. Miles Turner.
It's so funny because they were talking about trying to acquire Miles Turner a couple years ago or a year
Yeah.
ago. And I was like, wow, he is like the perfect guy to have next to Sabonis. And I was like, wait, we've seen it before and it didn't work then, but maybe it'll work for us. I don't know. He's just like, he's the type of guy you look at his stats and you're like, I want that guy. And then you're pay, but like, he's not the type of guy you want to pay 40 to $50 million a year.
What if you had De'Aaron Fox and Halliburton?
I mean, Hallie and DeMontis might have worked offensively at least.
Yeah.
We never, that was the trade. If they would have, I wish they would have traded Fox for Sabonis instead. I hate De'Aaron
Yeah.
Fox. I hate him.
Well, apparently he hates you guys too.
Yeah, he hates
So,
us too. So that's it's even, bitch. Um, but yeah, so like if Sabonis is like your best player, it's like where are you going? But then also he's a top 20 player in the NBA. But like any of the other top 20 guys, if I have them, I'm like going somewhere. But just not it's very confusing. We'll talk about it during NBA top 20 this
yeah.
year. But for now, that is it for us. As always, Fouled Out can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Pocket Cast, Overcast, anywhere you get your podcast. You can hit us up on Gmail, fouledoutsports@gmail.com. You can find our videos on TikTok at Fouled Out Sports Podcast. It is a long name, but you can't miss it. I mentioned this earlier, but just to recap, the next couple podcasts, next week, we're going to do another NBA podcast of some sort, followed by one more NBA pod the week after that. Week of March 10th, NFL free agency, and then March 17th and March 24th, March Madness, March 31st, March Madness, and the beginning of our NFL draft coverage. All of April is NFL draft, followed, all of April is the NFL draft. Matt and I will be together at the end of April to be watching the draft, so you might get a little bonus pod in there. And then after April, we go back to the NBA playoffs on May 5th. So lots of good things coming up. If you guys have any NBA questions or content, stuff you want us to address on the pod, text me or email us, fouledoutsports@gmail.com. Appreciate you guys listening. We love to hear from you. But for now, Matt, my friend, I will see you later.
Yep. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. Bye,
Bye,
Mom.
Robin.